So many people consider Doctor Strange to be the strongest hero in Marvel Champions, and there is a reason why. Hello everybody, my name is Nelson. Welcome to Nelson All Over Cards. Today we are taking a deep dive into Doctor Strange, the mystic, used to be Sorcerer Supreme, Doctor Strange. So I'm so very excited to talk about Doctor Strange. He is so incredibly powerful, and it's kind of fun to just kind of beat up on some people every once in a while. But here we are, let's dive into what he can do. In his alter ego, he has a setup ability that says Stephen Strange starts with this Invocation Deck, which is where all the power kind of comes from Doctor Strange. It's an incredibly strong mechanic. We're going to talk about the Invocation Deck here in a second, but let's go ahead and talk about some of his other things that he can do. So his natural talent ability allows him to discard the top card of the Invocation Deck, allowing you to get to cycle what you need. The Invocation Deck is made up of a lot of different cards that can solve a lot of different problems. So based on the problem that you have, if you are an alter ego, you have the ability to kind of cycle to what you need. In his hero form, he has a 2/1/2 stat line, and his spell mastery ability says you can exhaust Doctor Strange and pay the printed cost of the top card of the Invocation Deck. The Invocation Deck does have that top card face up. Then you resolve it and then discard it. So this is where it starts to get crazy. Very rarely am I actually using Doctor Strange for his basic attack, thwart, or defense. Sometimes the thwart, because these invocations are so incredibly good. Let's dive into them. It has everything you need. So Crimson Bands is a damage card. It's a 2-cost 7 damage attack that also stuns the enemy that's attacked. You have Images of Icon, which is threat removal and confuse. 7 Rings allows you to pass out a ton of tough status cards. Vapors of Valtor allows you to swap out some status cards. So if you have maybe the villain with a tough, you can swap that into a stun or confuse, or vice versa. If you are stunned or confused yourself, you can use Vapors to switch it up and give yourself a tough card. So incredible versatility there that can really solve a lot of problems. And then my favorite of the Invocation Deck is Winds of Watum. This is a 0-cost card to draw 3 cards, which can get insane. So with his 5 hand size, all you have to do is exhaust Doctor Strange, and all of a sudden he goes up to an 8 hand size when Winds of Watum is listed there. The majority of Doctor Strange's strength comes from this deck. However, the deck just amplifies an already incredible hero. Without that deck, I saw this somewhere on Facebook, and I apologize, I don't remember where or who I saw say it, but I thought it was incredible. It says that if you just remove the Invocation Deck, Doctor Strange would kind of probably be on par with a lot of the other heroes. He is just so flexible. For example, Astral Project is a 2-cost card that removes 3 threat from a scheme, and then you get to scry the top card, and then you get to remove an additional amount of threat based on the boost icons on that card. Not only are you getting additional threat mitigation, but you do get to see what is coming. So if you are about to deck out, you see what your encounter card is going to be, or you know what the next boost card is going to be, which allows so much ability to kind of figure out exactly what you need to do. His Cloak of Levitation gives him aerial, so now he has access to all the really cool aerial cards that we've gotten over these last couple cycles, as well as having an ability to ready Doctor Strange. So this allows you to go in and use a basic power, or if you have the money, play more invocation cards. So you can get 2 activations of the Invocation Deck once you have the Cloak on the table without any of his other cards, and that's where we start to get a little bit silly, because a lot of his other cards start to interact with the Invocation Deck, like Master of the Mystic Arts. This is a 1-cost card that says to resolve the top card of the deck and put it back on top. So this can lead to some pretty crazy turns, because you can start spamming specific cards. So like a Crimson Bands, if you pay this, then you pay the 2 to resolve Crimson Bands, then you immediately have access to Crimson Bands again. So that can be 14 damage right there. Or my favorite thing is to just spam Winds of Watum. So if you use this card, if you use Master of the Mystic Arts to pay for Winds of Watum, it goes back on the top of your deck, then you can exhaust and draw 3 more cards, and at that point you just have like 12 cards in your hand and you don't really know what to do with yourself. Master of the Mystic Arts is an incredibly powerful card, especially once you get the Invocation Deck to be where you want it to do. Now, How do you do that? You can use his natural talent ability in an alter ego to kind of cycle to what you need, or his basic ally is Wong, who allows you to cycle, either discard the top card, which reveals the next card, or you can heal Doctor Strange. Wong has a couple of different options, and once you get him onto the table, again, you are just using them. Typically, I'm just using Wong to cycle that Invocation deck, or if I do get in a sticky situation, which is pretty rare because he has so much access to stun, confuse, tough, that Doctor Strange doesn't take a whole lot of damage, that Wong could heal if you do get in trouble. Out of all the cards that he has, the only card that I rarely play is Magical Enhancements, and this is an upgrade that gives +1 to all of a character's basic stats, so +1 thwart, defense, and attack. And it's okay, however, I don't necessarily want to be using Doctor Strange for his basic activation. I'd rather be exhausting him to pay for the Invocation deck, and therefore giving me +1 stats for a round doesn't necessarily do a whole lot for me. Now in multiplayer, I think that this math changes a little bit, especially if you have another hero that can ready pretty frequently on the table, then yeah, we can get this on to that hero, play it under their control and not under Doctor Strange's, and then that changes the effectiveness of this card. But in solo, it very rarely gets used for anything other than a resource. So let's dive into some of the basic cards that he likes in all of his decks. So the first two that I'm going to talk about, you're going to hear me just hammer whenever you see a Mystic traded heroes, either Scarlet Witch, Doctor Strange, Adam Warlock, then you're probably going to want to find room for these cards in their deck. The first one being Spiritual Meditation. This is a 0 cost card. You can only play it if you're a Mystic traded hero, and it allows you to draw 2 cards and discard a card. It sounds very unexciting, however, what that does is it thins out your deck and again allows you to draw into the cards that you really need. I typically am always running 3 cards of Spiritual Meditation in my deck. The second one that all Mystics should look to include is the Sorcerer Supreme, even though there is some contention on if Doctor Strange is even the Sorcerer Supreme anymore. Anyways, but Sorcerer Supreme gives you a +1 hand size while you're in hero form, so just incredible value for a 2 cost gray card. And then the last card that I wanted to talk about for basics is Cosmo. So Cosmo is dumb with Doctor Strange. So Cosmo is a 2 cost ally that has 1 thwart, 1 attack, and whenever he uses a basic activation, you can name a card type from any deck on the table. If you get it correct, then he does not take consequentials. What this means is you can utilize it for your Invocation deck because you always know that they're going to be events. And that's dumb. Not only does Cosmo not take any consequentials, which is the smallest part of the benefit here, it's just another cycler. So once you have Cosmo and Wong out on the table, you can get through your Invocation deck and hit the cards that you need very quickly and frequently, kind of breaking it even more. So Cosmo is an auto include in every single Strange deck I run. So those are the basic cards. Let's dive in and rank some of our aspects. I'm going to rank them in worst to best, although worst is probably way better than a lot of the other heroes' best. So there is that, kind of keep that in mind. And then once I get to my favorite aspect, I'll call that out. So in 4th place, we have Aggression. So Doctor Strange doesn't need too much more damage in his kit because he has Crimson Bands, which is a 7 damage, really effective attack that is in that small deck of 5 cards. And then he has Magic Blast that also can do a pretty significant amount of damage. That Aggression is just kind of like piling it on, and at that point you just kind of win quick and go home. So Aggression doesn't necessarily get you anything more than what Doctor Strange can already offer in his kit, and so it's not the aspect that I typically lean into with Doctor Strange. Similar to the Psionic cards that we were talking about with Phoenix, all the Mystics have an aspect card that is only playable if you are a Mystic, and Aggression's is Magic Attack, and it's actually pretty good. So Magic Attack is probably the saving grace for Aggression because it is a 1 cost attack where you discard cards from the top of your deck and deal damage equal to the amount of cards discarded. So up to 5, I think, Probably should have looked that one up. But anyways, this helps out with a little bit of minion control, which Doctor Strange could, if I had to pick a weakness, it would be minion control, right? All of his attacks are just too good, right? So you want to be throwing that on the hero and not necessarily hitting a minion for 7 when they don't need to be hit for 7. He doesn't necessarily have a basic activation because you're using that for the invocation play. So aggression could help out with the minion control, but it's not really all that needed. Which brings us into our third best aspect, and that's going to be the green aspect, protection. This actually works out pretty well with Doctor Strange, not necessarily because he's going to be defending all the time, but because of how protection allows you to ready. So now that we have cards like What Doesn't Kill Me and Ever Vigilant, which he does get aerial once he gets his cape on, then we have access to a lot of readying, allowing us to either thwart more or pay for more invocation cards. The other thing that protection kind of shores up is if you're not able to kind of get in your stun lock rhythm where you are consistently stunning, confusing, giving yourself tough cards so that you're not taking damage, maybe the villain stalwart or steady or something like that, then protection can help build out against preventing damage, which allows you to stay in hero form. Doctor Strange typically wants to be in hero form, so that can help out with some of those villains that maybe you can't stun or confuse. So that could help a little bit. The Mystic card in green is Shield Spell. Shield Spell is a very solid defense event. It's a 0 cost card where whenever you take damage from an attack, you discard cards from the top of your deck equal to that amount of damage and then negate it all. So if you do need, if you have someone coming in swinging really hard, maybe like a Thanos or even a Rhino or something like that, that's going to be hitting you a ton, just mill your deck and you're going to be fine. So Shield Spell is really good. I like Shield Spell. That brings us to the second best aspect for Doctor Strange, which is Justice. So I think this is the second best aspect because it is the second best aspect for card draw before leadership. Hint, hint. Justice with One Way or Another is incredibly good. One Way or Another, we've talked about before, is just an incredible card. It allows you to draw cards and then put out a side scheme. Doctor Strange is not going to have issues with threat removal because of astral projection, images from the Invocation Deck, and then also he just has a solid 2 thwart ability. If you throw Heroic Intuition, he's already at 3. So anything that you pull with One Way or Another, you can probably take care of that same turn. That allows you to draw 3 cards, and then at that point you have a lot of cards in your hand. The way that I typically am playing Doctor Strange is how quickly can I get to Doctor Strange's cards, so this is just a really effective way to do that. On the other hand, the Mystic card, I don't love this Mystic card. So Zone of Silence is useful, but I usually find myself just throwing other thwart cards in my deck over Zone of Silence just because I don't always need an exact number. I don't know. I don't even know what it is about Zone of Silence. It's just I don't love Zone of Silence. So that is the one downside to yellow if it needed one. The downside to yellow is there's a card that I don't run. I guess you could say that. But that does lead us into our best and my favorite aspect, and that's leadership. And leadership is so absurdly good. Doctor Strange loves card draw, and leadership does that so very well with strength and numbers. Flood the field with your allies, use strength and numbers to draw as many cards as you need. Get Wong and Cosmo out there to cycle that Invocation Deck. If you're drawing into your Master of the Mystic Arts, you can spam Winds of Watum. You can then use Winds of Watum. There are just so many excellent combos, and you will sit there with a hand of 10 to 12 cards. So strength and numbers is the absolute best way to go with Doctor Strange in blue, and because of this flexibility, you're going to draw into whatever you need in order to take care of the problem that's being presented. Do you need threat mitigation? You're going to draw astral projections. Do you need damage? Magic attack is there for you. Leadership is incredibly good. If you don't have a strength in numbers, then you have a flood of allies that you can just use to either take out the minions, side schemes, hit the villain. There's just a lot to like in the blue aspect for Doctor Strange. And if all of that was not reason enough, Summoning Spell is bonkers good. So this is a 2-cost event, and you play it, you discard cards from the top of your deck until you get an ally, and you put that into play. Because Doctor Strange does not have issues paying for cards because of his insane card draw and therefore his really incredible economy, you can flood your deck with pretty high cost allies, use summoning spells to get them onto the table, and then win, profit. Step 3, profit, right? So in my Leadership Doctor Strange video, which is linked below, I summoned Nick Fury, and it was glorious. It was incredible. So sometimes it just feels good to feel like a Sorcerer Supreme. Those are the ranked aspect. The community ranked them similar to what I had, except we had Protection and Justice flipped, which is totally understandable. I get that. I see that argument. I just think the one way or another build with Doctor Strange is dumb. So I think that kind of boost up Justice a little bit more than the Protection. But as you increase player counts, one way or another does become less effective. The community also ranked him in S tier. There are some people that put him as a D tier. I'm not quite sure. I'm assuming that was a joke, but whatever. And as our overall ranking, as you can see, I'm gonna put up the ranking here. I added pluses, so there's an S plus, A plus, B plus, etc., tier to help try and streamline the ranking here. And he's S plus tier. He's at the very top of the list. If we get someone that is a little bit stronger than Doctor Strange, I think that's going to actually cause some controversy because of how good he already is. He is the king. I'm not quite sure if we'll ever see someone take him out. If we are, it's gonna be crazy. It's gonna be insane. He is so incredibly good. He has so much flexibility with the Invocation deck, which is only 5 cards. You cycle through them so quickly, and you have Wong and Cosmo to get to where you need to be, that you will be able to solve any problem that the villain is throwing at you incredibly efficiently. And that is why Doctor Strange is so good. He is incredible in all of the aspects. So aggression being his worst aspect is not saying a lot, because aggression is still very strong with Strange. Absolutely best hero in Marvel Champions without a doubt. What are your thoughts? Do you think that there's someone that is stronger? I've heard some arguments and I'm curious to hear some more, so throw those down in the comments if you think someone else is stronger than Doctor Strange. Also, in the video description, you can vote on who I play next. The next Hero Spotlight is going to be Scarlet Witch, and then we've got a couple of new mutants that are coming out. So we're going to see Storm and Wolverine hit the table here soon, and then after that we'll pick up with some of the legacy heroes. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you liked this content, please consider giving it a like and a follow to the channel to see more of this stuff. I'm playing a lot of Marvel Champions, a lot of Lord of the Rings, and a lot of Arkham Horror, so it does go a long way in helping support the channel and promote the channel. So I would very much appreciate it if you would do so. Thank you all for hanging out. Go be a Sorcerer Supreme. Go just find the hardest villain you can possibly find and take Doctor Strange against him. It's gonna be fun. Thank you all for hanging out. Peace.